The grand hall of the Malik mansion glittered with chandeliers so bright they seemed to swallow the stars outside. Laughter echoed across the marble floors, crystal glasses clinked, and the fragrance of imported perfumes floated in the air. But amid the wealthy guests in sparkling gowns and tuxedos, one figure moved quietly, almost invisible: Aisha, a 22-year-old maid with eyes that carried both sorrow and resilience. Aisha had always been different from the other servants. She was soft-spoken yet observant, with a sharp mind that noticed every detail. Tonight, as she moved between tables with a tray of drinks, her heart pounded not from the weight in her hands, but from the decision she knew she would soon have to make. Would she continue bowing to humiliation forever? Or would she risk everything by stepping into a truth that could change her life and theirs forever? And if she dared, what would the powerful family do to silence her? The gathering. The sunlight had long vanished, replaced by golden lamps that lit every corner of the Malik estate. Cars worth fortunes lined the driveway. Inside, Mr. Zamir Malik, the owner of a vast textile empire, hosted his annual dinner, where politicians, businessmen, and celebrities came to be seen. But not everyone came to shine. Some came to sneer. Aisha felt it when she accidentally brushed past a guest's gown. "Careful, girl," the lady snapped, looking her up and down with disgust. A ripple of mocking laughter followed. Aisha lowered her gaze. "Sorry, madam." From across the hall, she caught the piercing eyes of Sarah Malik, the eldest daughter of the house. Sarah was beautiful, dressed in diamonds, but her smile was sharp as glass. She whispered something to her friends, who glanced at Aisha and laughed again. It was always like this. She was a shadow in their grand world, a shadow they enjoyed stepping on. A glimpse of the past. As Aisha refilled glasses, her mind drifted back. She wasn't born to be a servant. Her father, once a respected accountant, had worked for the Maliks for years. But after his sudden death, her mother fell ill, and debts chained them. To survive, Aisha had taken her father's place, not in the office, but in the servants' quarters. She had seen things here: papers left on desks, hushed arguments, late-night dealings that told her the Malik family's glitter wasn't as clean as it appeared. But she kept silent, swallowing her pride with every chore. Until tonight. Because tonight, something was about to change. The spark of humiliation. It started with a cruel game. Sarah clapped her hands to get everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said with a smirk, "let's have some fun. Look at this maid, doesn't she move as if she owns the place? Tell me, Aisha, do you secretly dream of being one of us?" The hall burst into laughter. Someone shouted, "Maybe she thinks she'll marry a millionaire." Aisha froze, the tray trembling in her hands. Her lips pressed tight, but inside her chest, a storm raged. One of Sarah's friends added, "Come on, maid, walk like a queen. Show us your fantasy." The guests laughed harder. Cameras were raised, some recorded the scene for entertainment. Aisha's cheeks burned with shame. She wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't move. Her eyes darted to one corner of the hall where Mr. Zamir Malik sat silently, watching. His expression was unreadable, but he didn't stop his daughter. That silence cut deeper than the laughter. The secret key. Later that night, after the guests returned to their laughter and music, Aisha slipped away into the quiet corridors of the mansion. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from determination. She had hidden something for years. Something she found one evening when cleaning Mr. Malik's study, a file of documents, contracts, signatures, and records that didn't add up. She had copied them secretly, keeping them safe. Those papers held truths about fraud, stolen properties, and hidden wealth. She never used them until now. Tonight, after the humiliation, her heart told her she could no longer remain silent. But what would happen if she revealed it? Would they crush her before she even opened her mouth? Or, could this be the beginning of her rise? A witness appears. As she stood in the dim hallway, clutching her secret folder hidden in her apron pocket, a voice startled her. "Aisha?" She turned to see Hamza, the Malik's young chauffeur. Unlike the others, Hamza often treated her with respect, even kindness. His dark eyes searched her face. "I saw what they did to you," he said softly. You don't deserve this. Aisha swallowed hard. Hamza, if I told you something, would you believe me? Try me. She hesitated, then whispered, the Maliks aren't what they seem. I have proof. Hamza's brows furrowed. Proof of what? Before she could answer, heavy footsteps echoed nearby. A servant rushed past, whispering that the Malik family wanted all staff in the hall immediately. Aisha hid the folder again, her pulse racing. The announcement. Back in the glittering hall, silence fell as Mr. Zamir Malik stood, raising a glass. Friends, he declared, tonight is special. Not only are we celebrating our success, but I have an announcement. A merger that will make us more powerful than ever. The crowd applauded. Sarah smirked, her eyes glancing at Aisha as if to remind her of her place. But Aisha's mind wasn't on the announcement. Her fingers brushed against the hidden papers in her pocket. She could ruin this celebration with a single move. She looked at Hamza across the room. He gave her a faint nod, as if urging her to stand up for herself. Her chest tightened. The choice was before her. As the applause died down, Sarah's mocking voice rang out again. Father, perhaps our maid would like to give a speech too, since she seems so eager to stand among us. Laughter erupted once more. Aisha's hand trembled inside her apron. She could stay silent, bow her head, and continue living in shadows. Or she could pull out the folder right here, in front of everyone, and change the game forever. Her breath caught. The music faded. Every pair of eyes seemed to turn toward her. And in that moment, Aisha made her decision. The grand hall of the Malik mansion fell silent, but the silence wasn't peaceful. It was sharp, almost dangerous, as if the chandeliers themselves were holding their breath. Dozens of eyes darted between Sarah, smirking at the maid, and Aisha, standing frozen, her hands clenched tight against her apron. Inside Aisha's chest, her heart pounded like a war drum. Her humiliation had reached its peak, and tonight she wasn't the girl who bowed. Tonight, she was the girl who had a choice. The breaking point. Sarah crossed her arms, her diamonds glittering under the lights. Well, Maid? Say something. Or are you too scared to open your mouth in front of people who actually matter? Laughter rippled through the room again. But this time, Aisha did not lower her eyes. Slowly, she raised her head. Her gaze locked with Sarah's, steady, unflinching. The crowd quieted, sensing something unusual. Her voice was calm, but it cut through the hall like a blade. Scared? No. But maybe you should be. A murmur spread among the guests. Sarah blinked, her smirk faltering. What did you just say? She hissed. Aisha took a step forward, her trembling hands finally pulling something from the pocket of her apron. The guests leaned in. A stack of papers worn, creased, but undeniable. These, Aisha said, lifting them, are the truth about your father's empire. The storm breaks. The hall erupted into whispers. Politicians leaned to one another. Business rivals craned their necks. Even the waiters froze, holding trays mid-air. Mr. Zamir Malik rose to his feet, his face pale but his voice thunderous. Enough! Girl, you dare bring this nonsense into my house? Aisha stood firm, though her knees threatened to buckle. Not nonsense, sir. Fraud. Stolen land, illegal transfers, hidden accounts. All signed under your name. I've seen everything. Gasps filled the hall. Cameras clicked. Someone started recording on their phone. Sarah's face turned crimson. You liar. Who do you think you are? Aisha's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but her voice didn't waver. I was a servant who watched, listened, and remembered. And now, I'm the witness you cannot silence. The first blow. For a heartbeat, time froze. Then chaos exploded. One guest stood up angrily. Zamir, is this true? We trusted you with millions in investments. Another shouted, this is fraud. You'll be finished if the media gets this. Zamir raised his hand, trying to control the crowd. Please, these are lies, cheap tricks of a desperate servant. But even as he spoke, sweat beaded his forehead. Aisha noticed. And so did the guests. Hamza, standing at the back, clenched his fists with pride. He had never seen Aisha so fierce, so unbreakable. The unseen enemy. But power never falls so easily. From the far end of the hall, another voice rose, cold and calculating. Mr. Farouk, Zamir's business partner, a man with eyes as sharp as knives, stepped forward. Enough drama, Farouk said, glaring at Aisha. You think a few papers will bring down an empire? Do you know who you are fighting? Aisha's lips tightened. The truth doesn't need power to stand. It only needs courage. Farouk's smile was thin. And courage can be silenced. The hall went still. The threat was clear, though dressed in polite words. Hamza steps forward. Before fear could grip her, Hamza's voice rang out. If anyone touches her, they'll answer to me. The crowd turned. A chauffeur, challenging millionaires. It was absurd, yet his eyes burned with conviction. Sarah laughed mockingly. Oh, how touching. The maid and the driver, what a fairy tale pair. Perhaps you two should run away together, since you clearly don't belong here. But Aisha didn't flinch. She raised her chin. We belong more than you think. The guests divide. The tension spread like wildfire. Some guests whispered in support. She's brave. If this is true, the Maliks are finished. Others scoffed. She's only a maid. What proof can she really have? This must be jealousy. The room split into murmurs, suspicions, and shifting loyalties. Mr. Malik slammed his glass down. Enough. I will not allow my name to be dragged through the mud by a servant. But before he could continue, Aisha opened the folder wide, holding up the documents for all to see. Signatures. Stamped seals. Property records. The evidence was undeniable. The shocking twist. Just when the crowd leaned closer, desperate to see, the lights flickered, then cut out completely. Gasps, screams, and the shattering of glass filled the darkness. Aisha felt a hand grab her wrist. She froze until she recognized Hamza's voice whispering in her ear. Come with me. You're not safe here. In the confusion, he pulled her toward the servants' passage. The folder pressed tightly against her chest, her lifeline. But as they slipped away, a voice echoed in the dark hall, cold and furious. Find her. Bring me that folder now. The hunt had begun. Darkness swallowed the Malik mansion like a beast. The glittering chandeliers, the glowing lamps, the polished marble all vanished in an instant. Only panicked voices, hurried footsteps, and the clinking of glasses crashing to the floor filled the hall. In the chaos, Aisha gripped the folder tight against her chest, her breath shallow. She could almost feel the eyes of Zamir Malik and Farouk hunting her even in the dark. But a firm hand guided her through the servants' passage, Hamza's hand. Quickly, he whispered, pulling her into the narrow corridor. Before they trapped the exits. Her heart raced. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was carrying the one weapon powerful enough to bring the Maliks down. The mansion in panic. Back in the hall, Mr. Zamir Malik's furious voice thundered through the dark. Find her. She won't leave this house alive. Sarah's shrill tone followed. She embarrassed us in front of everyone. Don't let her escape. Guests shouted in confusion. Some demanded to leave, others whispered about scandals and police. But Aisha barely heard them. Every step she and Hamza took echoed in her ears like a drumbeat of fate. A secret route. Hamza knew the mansion's layout better than most. There's a side door near the old kitchen, he muttered, pulling Aisha along. Servants use it to bring supplies. If we're lucky, no one's guarding it yet. Aisha stumbled, her slippers slipping on the stone floor. Hamza, if they catch us. He cut her off sharply. They won't. Not if you trust me. For a moment, Their eyes met in the dim glow of an emergency light. And though fear clawed at her, Aisha felt a flicker of something stronger, hope. The first confrontation. But hope was fragile. As they turned a corner, two large men appeared, bodyguards, shadows looming against the faint light. One of them snarled, "Stop right there." Hamza stepped in front of Aisha, fists clenched. "Stay behind me." The guard lunged. Hamza dodged, shoving Aisha aside. The second man grabbed for the folder, but Aisha clutched it tighter, refusing to let go. With a sharp move, Hamza struck one guard's jaw, sending him crashing against the wall. But the other pinned Hamza down. "Aisha, run!" Hamza shouted. Her eyes widened. Could she abandon him? Could she risk losing the only person who stood by her? Her decision came in a heartbeat. She swung the heavy folder into the guard's face. The papers scattered, fluttering like wounded birds, but the blow gave Hamza enough time to break free and knock the man unconscious. Breathing hard, Hamza gathered the scattered documents. Aisha bent down, clutching his arm. "I'm not leaving you behind. Not ever." For a moment, his expression softened, but there was no time. They ran. The mansion's secrets. They reached the old kitchen, its windows cracked, its walls smelling of smoke and spices from forgotten years. Hamza pushed open a wooden door, revealing the garden beyond, dark, vast, and surrounded by high walls. But before they could step out, a chilling voice echoed behind them. "Leaving so soon?" Aisha froze. Sarah Malik stood in the doorway, her diamond necklace catching the faint light, her eyes burning with rage. In her hand, a phone glowed, already recording. "You think anyone will believe a servant's lies over my father's word?" Sarah sneered. "Give me the folder, or I swear, you'll regret the day you were born." Aisha's voice shook, but her spirit didn't. "You can laugh at me, Sarah. You can humiliate me. But you can't erase the truth." Sarah's smirk deepened. "Then the truth will bury you." At her signal, more guards stormed into the kitchen. A desperate escape. Hamza grabbed Aisha's hand. "We'll have to make a run for it." They dashed toward the garden door. A guard lunged, grabbing Aisha's arm. She cried out, nearly dropping the folder again. Hamza shoved the man aside, slamming the wooden door open. Cold night air rushed in. They stumbled into the garden, the grass wet beneath their feet. Behind them, shouts rose. Lights flashed as guards chased after them. The massive iron gates at the end of the garden loomed like salvation, but they were locked. Hamza scanned the wall. There! The old mango tree, its branches reach over the wall. They sprinted toward it, Aisha clutching the folder so tightly her fingers ached. Hamza boosted her up, his hands steadying her as she climbed. Her heart pounded, every rustle in the trees sounding like danger. Just as she reached the top branch, a gunshot split the night. The bark near her hand splintered. She gasped, nearly falling. "Climb, Aisha!" Hamza shouted from below. "Don't look back!" She pulled herself over the wall, dropping onto the other side. But as she turned back, her stomach dropped in horror. Hamza was still on the ground, fighting off guards who had swarmed him. One of them struck his head hard, he staggered, blood streaking his temple. "No!" Aisha screamed, clutching the folder through the iron bars. Hamza met her eyes, his voice hoarse but firm. "Go! Save yourself! Save the truth!" And before she could respond, the guards dragged him back into the shadows of the garden. Aisha stood trembling on the other side of the wall, torn between running to safety and going back for the only person who had stood by her side. Her tears blurred the folder in her hands, the fragile weapon that had cost her everything. And the night was far from over. The cold night wrapped around Aisha as she stumbled into the empty street outside the Malik mansion. Her chest heaved, her hands trembled, and yet she clung to the folder as though her very life depended on it. Behind her, Hamza's cries still echoed in her mind, the image of him being dragged away burning into her heart. Every step she took away from that mansion felt like betrayal, but she knew Hamza's last words, "Save the truth." were not a plea but a command. Her slippers slapped against the pavement as she ran aimlessly, unsure where safety could be found. She could not return to the servant quarters, the Maliks would search there first. She could not go to her mother's small house in the old part of town, the family would surely send men to threaten her. She was alone in the darkness, except for the folder pressed against her chest. Aisha ducked into a narrow alley, crouching behind a stack of crates. Her heart hammered as two Malik guards ran past, their flashlights cutting across the night. She bit her lip to keep from crying out. For the first time, she truly understood the weight of the choice she had made. She had turned her back on the powerful, and power never forgave betrayal. But she also knew this was her only chance to rise from the humiliation she had endured for years. A sudden noise made her turn. A figure stepped from the shadows. For a heartbeat, she thought it was another guard, and terror clawed at her chest. But then she recognized the tired face and the gentle voice. "Aisha, it's me." It was Shanaz, one of the older maids who had worked in the mansion for decades. Her eyes were filled with worry as she pulled Aisha into a hidden corner. "Child, what have you done? The whole city will hear of this by morning." Aisha's voice shook. "I had no choice. They laughed at me, humiliated me, and I had the truth. I couldn't stay silent anymore." Shanaz sighed, her hands trembling as she touched the folder. "If these papers are real, then you've signed your own death warrant. Zamir Malik will never let them reach the public." Aisha clenched her fists. "Then I must make sure they do." Shanaz studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I know someone. A journalist. He has been looking for evidence against the Maliks for years. Maybe he can help." For the first time since the escape, a glimmer of hope sparked inside Aisha. She agreed to follow Shanaz. They moved quickly through the back streets, avoiding the main road, until they reached a small tea shop that was closed for the night. Inside, waiting with a worn notebook in his hand, sat a man in his late 30s, tired eyes but sharp, restless energy. "So this is the girl," he said, looking at Aisha. "The maid who dared to stand up." His name was Raza, an investigative journalist known for exposing corruption. He welcomed them cautiously, then leaned forward as Aisha placed the folder on the table. One by one, he flipped through the papers. His face changed with every page, first curiosity, then shock, then determination. This is enough to destroy the entire Malik Empire," Raza whispered. "Illegal transfers, land grabs, bribery. Aisha, do you understand what you're holding? This is dynamite. If we publish this, the Maliks won't just lose their wealth. They'll lose everything." Aisha's hands shook, but her voice was steady. "Then do it. Publish it. Let the world see who they really are." But just as hope began to settle, Raza's expression darkened. He glanced at Shanaz, then back at Aisha. "There's a problem. Zamir Malik has influence everywhere, the media, the police, even the courts. If I release this carelessly, it will be buried before it reaches the people. We need a plan." Aisha's breath caught. "And Hamza? They've taken him. I can't leave him there." Shanaz's eyes filled with sorrow. "Child. Hamza may already be." "No." Aisha cut her off, tears streaming down her face. "He risked his life for me. I will not abandon him." Raza leaned forward, his tone urgent. "Listen, Aisha. Saving Hamza will mean walking back into the lion's den. And if you are caught, these documents will vanish. Are you ready to risk both his life and yours?" Aisha's silence spoke louder than words. She was ready. Outside, the sound of approaching cars broke the fragile moment. Headlights flashed through the cracks of the shuttered tea shop. Shanaz gasped. "They've found us." Raza snapped the folder shut and shoved it back into Aisha's hands. "Run. Don't let them take this. If they get it, it's over." But Aisha didn't move. She wiped her tears, her face hardening into steel. "No. I've run enough. Tonight, I go back, not as a maid, but as the one holding their fate. The shop door rattled violently as shadows appeared outside. The Malik's men had arrived. And Aisha had to decide, run to save the evidence, or fight to save Hamza. The banging on the tea shop door grew louder, the metal rattling as if it would break off its hinges. Aisha clutched the folder tight to her chest, her breath sharp and quick. Shanaz's hands trembled as she whispered, "We have to escape, child. They'll kill us if they find us here." But Aisha's face was no longer that of a frightened servant. Her eyes blazed with determination. "No. I can't run anymore. They have Hamza. If I leave him in their hands, everything I've done means nothing." Raza paced, his mind racing. "If you go back, you'll be walking into a trap. Zamir Malik isn't just angry, he's desperate. And desperate men are dangerous. He'll do anything to silence you." "I know," Aisha said, her voice low but steady. "But I also know he's afraid. Afraid of these papers. As long as I hold them, I have a weapon stronger than his money, stronger than his men." She looked at Raza, her grip tightening on the folder. "Will you help me? Or will you just write stories about another girl who disappeared?" Raza froze, her words striking deep. After a tense silence, he finally nodded. "All right. I'll help you. But we need a plan." Moments later, as the Malik's men forced their way inside, Aisha, Raza, and Shanaz slipped out the back door into the winding alleys of the old city. The night air was heavy, carrying the distant hum of the mansion's searchlights sweeping across the sky. Every shadow felt like danger, every step like the edge of a blade. By the time they reached the mansion's outskirts again, the guards had tightened security. The walls were lined with watchmen, and the iron gates stood locked like prison doors. From somewhere deep inside, Aisha thought she heard a muffled cry, Hamza's voice, faint but alive. Her heart clenched. "We'll never get through the front," Raza whispered. "But there's another way. The drainage tunnel, it runs beneath the mansion and connects to the garden well. Risky, but it's our only chance." Shanaz looked horrified. "That tunnel hasn't been used in years, it's full of filth and rats." "Aisha, don't." But Aisha was already moving. "If it leads me to Hamza, then I'll crawl through the dirt itself." The tunnel was dark, damp, and foul, the stench nearly unbearable. The sound of dripping water echoed like ghostly whispers. Aisha's hands scraped against the stone walls as she crawled forward, the folder strapped tightly under her shawl. Raza followed, muttering curses under his breath, while Shanaz prayed softly, clutching a small pendant around her neck. At last, faint light appeared ahead. They emerged into the garden well, hidden by the shadow of the mango tree. Aisha peered across the yard. Guards patrolled in twos, rifles slung over their shoulders. And near the veranda steps, chained and bloodied, knelt Hamza. Her throat tightened at the sight. His shirt was torn, his face bruised, but his spirit was unbroken. Even in his weakened state, he raised his head defiantly whenever Sarah shouted at him. Sarah's voice carried through the night. "Tell me where she went. Tell me, or I'll make sure you don't live to see the sunrise." Hamza spat blood on the ground, his voice hoarse but strong. "Do what you want. I'll never betray her." Aisha's eyes burned with tears. She pressed her palm against her lips to keep from crying out. The risk of discovery was great, but the fire in her heart blazed stronger than fear. Raza leaned close. "This is it. If you reveal the papers now, they'll attack. But if we wait for the right moment, we can break him free." Aisha's jaw tightened. "No more waiting. They've taken enough from me." She stepped out of the shadows, clutching the folder high above her head. Her voice rang across the garden like thunder. "Let him go, or the world will know everything." The guards froze. Sarah's laughter rang out, sharp and mocking. "You came back? How noble, and how foolish. Do you really think a bundle of papers will save you now?" Behind her, Mr. Zamir Malik appeared on the steps, his face twisted with fury. "Girl, you've gone too far. Give me those documents, or I'll bury both you and that driver before dawn." Aisha's voice shook with fury and courage. You can bury me, Malik. But the truth has already taken root. Kill me, and these papers will still find their way to the world. Your empire is crumbling, and you know it. For the first time, Zamir hesitated. His eyes darted to the guests still lingering near the hall, whispering among themselves, recording on their phones. The walls of power he had built were beginning to crack. Sarah hissed, motioning to the guards. Take her. The men began to move forward, rifles raised. Aisha's breath caught, this was the end. But before they could reach her, Raza lit a flare he had hidden in his jacket and fired it into the sky. The red blaze burst above the mansion, casting the garden in blood-colored light. From the distance came the sound of sirens, loud, growing, unstoppable. The police. Chaos erupted. Guests screamed. Guards scrambled. Sarah shouted in panic, while Zamir cursed under his breath. And in the middle of it all, Aisha ran to Hamza, throwing herself at his chains. I'm here. I'm not leaving without you. Hamza's eyes widened, tears brimming as he whispered, You came back. The sirens drew closer. The Malik's empire trembled on the edge of collapse. But whether Aisha would triumph or be silenced before the truth could escape was still uncertain. The night sky blazed red from the flare, and the wail of sirens grew louder with every passing second. Aisha knelt beside Hamza, her trembling hands trying to free him from the chains while the Malik estate dissolved into chaos. Guards ran in confusion, guests slipped away in fear, and Sarah screamed at the top of her lungs, demanding someone stop the police. Mr. Zamir Malik, the man whose empire once shone brighter than gold, stood frozen on the veranda, his face pale under the flashing lights. For the first time, the mighty patriarch looked powerless. Hamza, still weak and bruised, managed a faint smile. You shouldn't have come back for me. Aisha pressed her forehead to his, tears glistening in her eyes. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't. The roar of engines filled the garden as police jeeps burst through the gates. Officers poured in, their flashlights cutting across the mansion walls. The commander, a stern-faced inspector, shouted, Nobody moves. Drop your weapons. The guards hesitated, then slowly lowered their rifles. The tide had turned. Sarah rushed forward, her voice shrill. Inspector, arrest that girl. She's a thief, a liar, a servant who dares to insult our family. But Aisha stood tall, holding up the folder with both hands. Her voice was clear, strong, and unstoppable. I am no liar. These documents prove everything, the fraud, the stolen lands, the bribes. Your empire is built on theft, and tonight, everyone will know the truth. The inspector stepped forward and took the folder. He flipped through the pages, his eyes narrowing as he read. Gasps filled the garden as he lifted his head and announced, These are government seals, official records. If these are authentic, the Malik family will face trial for corruption, embezzlement, and fraud. The guests, once loyal to the Maliks, now whispered in disgust. I knew something was wrong, all this wealth stolen from others. Their empire is finished. Sarah screamed in desperation, grabbing the folder from the inspector. Lies. All lies. She tried to tear the papers, but Raza leapt forward, wresting them from her grasp. He raised his phone high, live streaming the entire scene. The world is watching, Sarah. No more lies, no more shadows. Zamir staggered, his voice breaking. You think this will destroy me? I've survived worse. I have power, connections. The inspector cut him off coldly. Not anymore. Take them away. Police officers moved in, handcuffing Zamir and Sarah as they shouted in protest. For the first time, the Malik family was the one facing humiliation, their empire collapsing under the weight of their greed. Aisha turned back to Hamza, helping him to his feet. He leaned on her, his eyes filled with pride. You did it, Aisha. You stood against them, and you won. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but they were no longer tears of pain. They were tears of freedom. No, Hamza. We did it. You gave me the courage to fight. As dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight touched the ruins of the Malik Empire.
Reporters flooded the estate, cameras flashing, voices shouting.
Aisha, once the maid who had been mocked and laughed at, now stood as the symbol of truth and justice. Days later, the trial began. The Maliks were stripped of their wealth, their properties seized, their influence shattered. The documents Aisha had protected became the key evidence that brought them down. But for Aisha, the true victory was not wealth or fame.
It was dignity.
She no longer lived as a shadow, no longer bowed her head to cruelty. She and Hamza built a new life, simple but honest, where no one could laugh at their poverty again. And whenever people asked her how a maid could defeat millionaires, Aisha would smile and say, because courage is greater than power, and truth is heavier than gold. The story of the maid who rose against the rich became a lesson whispered in every household: never underestimate the one you humiliate, for the day may come when the truth you mocked becomes the truth that destroys you. Wealth and power built on lies can crumble in a single night, but dignity, courage, and honesty will always shine brighter than diamonds.